You're listening to the Unwritable Rant podcast with your host and bourbon-soaked storyteller, Juliette Miranda.
Hey there, y'all. It's Juliette Miranda, and welcome to episode 246 of the Unwritable Rant podcast. My bourbon-soaked story for you is about a great slab of art and a special Christmas errand. But first, I'm knocking back some bourbon. Cheers, y'all. Oh, y'all. Y'all, I'm drinking a very special bourbon today. I am drinking the Van Winkle 12-year Lot B bourbon, and it is spectacular. So it's been pretty goddamn busy around here these days, y'all, and I know it has a lot to do with the holidays, but there's also been writing and drinking a lot of bourbon to help with the writing and all sorts of projects. And in the middle of it all, I kind of found myself having what I like to call a defending your life moment. Now, defending your life is a line that I've blatantly stolen from the Albert Brooks movie. And for me, it describes one of those self-aware moments you have when you know one day you're going to have to defend the sheer stupidity of whatever it is that you're doing to some greater authority. Whether that's a god, the police, someone. For me, this movie came as I was helping my guy carry a piece of art across the French Quarter. It was a painting that we had had a local artist make a frame for, and between the frame and the glass and the general bulk of it all, I'd say that this thing weighed a solid 50 pounds. The artist had offered to drive it over to our place after his studio closed that night, but because my guy and I are instant gratification kind of people with little common sense, we decided we'd just each grab an end and carry the sucker the 5 blocks home. The minute we stepped out the door, I knew we'd made a mistake. For starters, the picture was too large to carry flat through the door, so we had to hoist it upright to get it out. All the yoga in the world couldn't prepare my sad little spaghetti arms for this kind of workout. And once outside, we had to maneuver our way past the usual quarter gathering of drunks and vagrants and pigeons, while having zero visibility of the uneven ground below us. Y'all, there are potholes big enough to eat a fucking Buick out here. All it would take is one misstep for my guy and I to wind up under a bed of broken glass and reclaimed wood in the bowels of New Orleans. I was convinced that each step I took was one closer to death. And as we wobbled our way across the quarter, I couldn't help but wonder, what the fuck are we doing? We may not have been the oddest sight on the street, but we definitely were not the brightest. And weirdly, this is not the first time I've found myself in a situation like this. That would have been when I was 16, and my dad had me run a special Christmas errand for him. 16 was not my best year. Not that any teenage years are exactly spectacular, but I think it's safe to say that at 16, I was a raging little asshole with the decision-making capability of a turkey. I was spending that particular holiday on full house arrest thanks to getting caught taking the car out of bounds. Like most of my friends, there were very specific places I could and could not drive. Now the mall, totally fine. Same with pretty much any place that could be reached by surface streets. Getting on the highway, however, required adult supervision, which would totally have made me look like a loser when I drove to see a certain guitar player rehearse. He was known to be a dead ringer for Nuno Bettencourt of Extreme, without any of the talent, of course, and his band practiced in a warehouse somewhere just shy of Indiana. That little adventure was a gross violation of pretty much every rule my parents had instated. Not that I cared, I just wanted to hang out with a Nuno lookalike. And I would totally have gotten away with it too, only I was a dumbass who parked the car in a tow zone. And not surprisingly, all of the musicians scattered at the first whiff of a complication. I was forced to call in my dad for a rescue. Consequently, that December was long, lonely, and boring as all fuck. Until my dad needed my help. He had purchased a painting from my mother as a Christmas present from a small gallery in downtown Chicago. Between work and writing his dissertation, my dad hadn't been able to find the time to pick it up. And now, with just 3 days remaining before the holiday, his only options were to have it shipped, which would mean the present wouldn't arrive until after Christmas, or have me pick it up for him. Now, apparently my dad had asked 3 relatives, a coworker, and 2 of our neighbors before approaching me, and even then his reluctance was palatable. And I don't blame him, I really don't. I was brooding, conniving, and not especially inclined to do anything helpful after being grounded during the biggest party month of the year. But my dad was desperate for help and, well, I was desperate to get the hell out of the house. So we made a chilly pact. If I did this favor for him, he'd let me attend the Christmas party my friends were throwing. Initially, it seemed I was getting the better end of the bargain, especially when I started mentally checking off all the pit stops I could make between the Chicago Loop and home without anyone ever being the wiser. But my dad, he was a clever one. There was no way he was giving me unsupervised access to the car. Instead, he said I was going to take the train downtown. He'd give me cash for tickets and cab fare, but that was it. Commuter trains ran out of the city every hour, and under no circumstances was I to be on one any later than 4 p.m. And he meant it. He said, "Kid, consider yourself Cinderella. If you're not on that platform for me to pick up by 5, you're not going to see the light of day until you're 18. Well, fuck. That didn't give me much to work with, especially when my dad personally dropped me off at the train station the next day and tightened the handcuffs just a little bit when he told me that the art gallery closes at 1 o'clock. He gives me a smug little wave as I board the train, and I have to fight the urge to flip him off. It would be nearly noon by the time I got downtown, which gave me no choice but to make the gallery my first stop. For that whole ride into the city, I fumed like only a pissed-off teenager can. My dad had effectively fucked any chance of me getting in a little me time. And by me time, I mean time for me to hook up with any of the dozen or so band guys I sniffed out in the area. Or did he? If I hustled my ass over to the gallery, which was located near Daly Plaza, I could then walk over to Marshall Fields, where, groupie rumor had it, the Nuno Betancourt lookalike worked in the basement food court. How sophisticated would I look, walking into that food court, painting tucked under my arm like a fucking boss? I would have just enough time to grab a salad and maybe some mineral water, and everyone would wonder who the exciting, cultured redhead was. Nuno and I could chat, and he would be so charmed by my chic sensibility, he'd immediately agree to be my date for the big Christmas party. In my head, I saw myself as Melanie Griffith in Working Girl, and I'd even thought ahead to wear my dressy winter coat, an ankle-length royal purple disaster that I refused to button so that my mini skirt and poet shirt could be seen beneath it. Oh, it was the height of style, in a deranged Renaissance fair sort of way. Nevertheless, I owned it, and I was so ready to flaunt it. Union Station was bustling when I got off the train. Just holiday shoppers and travelers packing the Great Hall with lost expressions and overstuffed baggage. And it would have been nearly impossible to get through there quickly, but I knew a shortcut to the underground cab stand. You see, I'd made countless visits to Union Station over the years. This was kind of what I believed to be the great contradiction of my life. That at 16, I wasn't able to drive more than 20 miles away from home, but that I had been allowed to take the train solo into the city since I was 12. What sense does that make? My dad often referred to it as the path of limited freedom, and if there was any logic in that theory, I didn't see it. At least, not until I got to the gallery and was confronted with just how limited my freedom was about to become. Dad hadn't offered me any description of what I'd be bringing home to him, and I hadn't thought to ask. I mean, it was a picture. My parents were pretty streamlined in their tastes, so it hadn't even occurred to me that I'd be a courier to anything bigger than a textbook. Oh, but that was the year my dad sold off his shares of the family business and consequently had money to burn on a painting from some dead Art Deco artist who favored a canvas approximately the size of our front door. Okay, maybe it was half the size of our front door. But either way, it was a hulking slab made all the bigger by layers of bubble wrap and brown paper and string. I tentatively lift the thing and I realize there's no tucking it under my arm. This is a two-handed package, one that banged against my kneecaps with every fucking step. Had I any sense, I would have hailed a cab and caught the next train home. But I didn't want to do that, because then my dad would win, and all I would have to show for my effort was 2 bruised kneecaps. No, damn it. I was going to go to Marshall Fields and get myself lunch and a date. Picture be damned. Walking those icy blocks to the department store, picture just clanging against my legs incessantly, I was reminded of a project that I'd done for health class, where for 2 weeks I had to babysit an egg. It came to class with me and followed me to the store and was supposed to illustrate the inconvenience of children, or something like that. Mostly, it just demonstrated the force of gravity when most of my class pitched their faux babies over the second-floor railing. I didn't have that luxury this time. Although I'll tell you, I thought about it, especially when I tried to maneuver my way through a revolving door. It being the holiday season and people being dicks, there were a good 7 or 8 shoppers crammed into that moving pie slice with me. Our general inertia had the door spinning like a slot machine. Only I couldn't find the balls to make the leap out against the throngs of people coming in. I just kept going around and around, waiting for the right break that would give me enough room to push forward without death at my feet. 2 people were trapped behind me and my great wall of art, and with each revolution became more and more pissed until one guy finally gave me a solid knock in the ass toward the opening. The weight of the painting pulls me down, not forward, and I don't quite make it out. Instead, my torso becomes wedged between the door and the wall. But does anybody actually pause and say, hey, maybe if we stop the door from spinning, we can help this idiot out? Of course they don't do that. They just yell things like, in or out, lady, we don't have all day, while continually and unhelpfully pushing against the door until I feel like I'm going to be severed in half. Eventually, I managed to wiggle my way out, tearing the hem of my coat and snagging my nylons in the process. Now, can we just pause for a moment here to appreciate the absolute horror that was women's pantyhose in the 80s? My preferred brand was called Sheer Energy, a wildly optimistic description for what were essentially flesh-colored meat casings. All the advancements in spandex couldn't prevent these atrocities from disintegrating with just the slightest tug. And it is with sinking disgust that I look down and realize there is a wide run from foot to thigh on my left leg that just completely ruined my look. Oh, I still looked like a professional, all right. Only was more the kind of professional who conducts her business behind a dumpster. For a moment, I considered removing the offending pantyhose, but then the thought of navigating one of those tiny women's room stalls with my enormous new appendage, it kind of made my eye twitch. And it was for similar reasons that I also decided to avoid the escalators. The basement at Marshall Fields was no better than Union Station. In addition to the janky food court, it included several blocks worth of crappy last-minute gifts and budget luggage and tall chairs lining the back walls where homeless guys could spit-shine your shoes. They were in the process of trying to class the place up, though. and the face of legendary Chicago politician Hinky Dink Kenna could be seen peeking from behind construction walls. Now, in case you're not up on your Chicago politics, Hinky Dink Kenna, yeah, he's the one who coined the phrase, vote early, vote often. Can't beat that logic. Now, Mock Nuno Betancourt worked just past Hinky Dink at a very empty fusion pizza place. Wolfgang Puck hadn't quite caught on yet, so most Chicagoans were suspicious of any pizza that didn't have at least 5 inches worth of mozzarella cheese topping the crust. Me, I didn't give a crap what I ate as long as Nuno made it. He was kind of slumped over the counter and glassy-eyed when I approached, and it took several prompts to get him to remember that he knew me. When he finally makes the connection, he smiles and he says, "Oh yeah, you're the chick who had her car towed." That's not exactly how I want to be remembered, so I brush it off and instead mention the killer Christmas party I was going to be going to that Saturday. "Want to come?" I ask. I said it like it was no big deal to me what he did with himself, when in reality, I was prepared to throw myself into the brick oven if he said no. I watch as he slathers a small flat crust with browning pesto and then drops a handful of speckled goat cheese and tomatoes on top. It is the sorriest excuse for a pizza that I had ever seen, but I make yummy noises anyway when he slides it into the oven. Nuno adjusts his hat and considers my question. "I don't know," he says. "Who else is going? Will there be a keg?" "Oh, a keg?" Yeah, the big highlight of this party was going to be a water cooler filled with Hawaiian Punch and Sprite. Everyone there would be around my age, except for the parental supervisors, and Nuno, if I could lie well enough to convince him to go. So I drop a few local band and booze names that I figure will impress him, but he's quiet as he pulls my pizza from the oven. He slides it over to me on a sagging paper plate, and I am beginning to feel dejected enough to saw my wrists open with a plastic knife, when Nuno tells me to wait a second. My mock Nuno Betancourt fishes around under the counter and comes up with a pen and paper. He scribbles a number down and he says, "Yeah, I don't know where I'm going to be on Saturday night, but page me. Maybe we can hook up." Saying "maybe we can hook up" to a maniac like me back then may as well have been a marriage proposal. Quite honestly, he's lucky I didn't hop over the counter and latch myself onto his leg. Instead, I pocket the number and casually wave as he goes to serve the next customer. Inside, however, I am reduced to a puddle of girly drool because, holy crap, Nuno must be totally into me. And I am so stupid excited by this revelation that I don't really think through my next steps. Had I been in my right head, I might have first found a table where I could prop up my gargantuan slab of priceless art, and then go back for my pizza. But no. Instead, I wrap my arms around the slab like it's Nuno's manly chest, and I clutch the edge of the pizza plate in the tips of my fingers. It is a precarious and stupid move, one that requires me to baby step pizza first into a swarming mass of people. Still, I think I'm doing okay. I've spotted an open table on the other side of a Frango mint display, and all I have to do is just keep moving forward. Unfortunately, there's absolutely no current to follow in the crowd. Not with everyone lost and clamoring to stop and paw at shitty stocking stuffers and tree ornaments. I want to scream, "Just fucking move, cattle!" Because in this scenario, where I am weighed down with precious and cheesy cargo, I am unable to be the one who shoves. No, here I am sadly the one who is shoved. Just as I'm starting to make some headway, a broad with a brood barrels right into me, and I pitch forward. The floor would have been my first destination, if that Frango mint display hadn't gotten in the way. Oh, y'all, it was ugly. I take that thing out like it's made of Legos, and we all go down. Me, the art, the pizza, and about 500 boxes of minty chocolates. Now, the artwork survived the fall just fine, It had so many layers of bubble wrap around it, the thing kind of bounced back like a super ball. Me, well, between the smeared pesto and sun-dried tomatoes I would be picking out of my crevices for the next 2 days, I looked a little bit like a toddler's rendering of a Christmas tree. A shitty Christmas tree. A Charlie Brown Christmas tree, if you will, and the gold star on top of it all, that was Nuno's face. He'd seen it all. The fall, the stains, the clump of goat cheese smeared on my forehead. And the minute we locked eyes, I knew, I knew. Any hope I had of hooking up with him on Saturday had just been shattered. The woman who caused this whole disaster in the first place is fucking livid. Apparently a box of falling chocolates broke her brat's toy, and she is screaming something about making me pay for it. Not likely, lady. All I have left at this point is a return ticket to the suburbs, a now worthless pager number, and a painting I would be forced to look at for the rest of my goddamn life. And I'll tell you, even now, decades later, whenever I video chat with my parents and that fucking painting appears on the wall behind one of them, I can't help but twitch just a little bit. I hate that painting. You might be wondering if I learned any sort of lesson from that day. About making good choices or being less self-involved. Something that might enable me now as an adult to do something like carry another pitcher, this time across the French Quarter. And the simple answer is no. My day-to-day thought process is questionable at best, particularly when presented with temptation. Because as my guy and I stumbled and hauled our way toward home recently, carrying art that was at least twice the size of that last pitcher, well, something caught my eye. I may not have been able to see my feet, but I could see in front of me. And there, gleaming in the sunlight and heralded by a choir of angels, was a sign. And it read, Whiskey Wednesday, $5 drink specials. Oh, I was so enthusiastic about this nugget of Christmas cheer and calling my guy's attention to it that I walked right into a goddamn pothole. Don't worry though, the painting is fine. My ankle? Not so much. Fortunately, the bar was more than happy to give me a side of ice with that $5 whiskey. So I guess it's all good. Cheers, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Unwritable Rant podcast. Don't forget to join me on Monday night at 7 p.m. Central Time for Bourbon-Soaked Live. It's on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Juliette Miranda. And I go live with a little show called Bourbon-Soaked Live where we have cocktails and conversation. And I'll be drinking that Van Winkle 12-year and telling you all about how I got my hands on this bottle. Don't forget, you can also go to theunwritablерant.com to catch up on back episodes, check out some of my merchandise, and of course, buy me a drink. Now, y'all, I'm going to go have a little bit more of this Van Winkle. But I will be back next Sunday to chat with y'all some more. Hope you have a great week. Cheers, y'all.
Go to theunwritablерant.com and sign up to get early access to interviews and new videos. And don't forget to connect with Juliette on Twitter @MorningNeurosis.
Girl, you was pretty as a Sunday morning, standing on the corner at Carondelet. What you say we make our way up to Bourbon, a couple hurricanes and a hand grenade, and get blown away. Let the chips fall where they may. If it's all the same, what you say, bon ton, hey, pretty mama, I can smell the gumbo. Sweetest taste of honeysuckle on my lips. Good God Almighty, I can hear the trombone. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm like this. Come a little closer, honey, let me hold you. Nothing tastes better than a bourbon kiss. You can be the flower on my magnolia. Every heart ought to beat to a rhythm.